Every wild stallion eventually breaks. At least, that's what the ranchers believed. Because every horse, no matter how strong or wild, eventually learns the same lesson. The rope always wins. But one morning in a quiet valley, a stallion proved that belief wrong. Because when the rope finally landed around his neck, he didn't run. He didn't fight. He didn't panic. He simply stood there. And what happened next forced a seasoned rancher to make a decision no one on that ranch had ever made before. For months, riders had seen him from a distance, a dark stallion standing on the ridge above the valley. The other horses ran when people approached, but this one didn't. He watched still.com, almost as if he was studying the riders instead of fearing them. The ranch hands began talking about him. Some said he was just stubborn. Others believed he was dangerous. But the oldest rancher on the property said something different. That horse isn't wild, he said quietly. He's aware. They started calling the stallion Iron Wind. Not because he fought, but because nothing seemed to move him. Eventually, the ranch owner made a decision. A horse like that belongs in a saddle, he said. If we can train him, he'll be the finest horse on this ranch. So one cold morning before sunrise, 3 riders saddled up and rode toward the valley. Their plan was simple: find the stallion, corner him, throw the rope, bring him home. It was the same method they had used for years, because every wild horse follows the same pattern. First they run, then they fight, then they break. At least, that's what the riders expected. They found Iron Wind grazing near the ridge. The lead rider slowly began spinning his rope. The stallion lifted his head, but he didn't run. The rope cut through the morning air, and the loop dropped perfectly around the horse's neck. Normally, this is the moment chaos begins. Wild horses explode with panic. They kick, they bolt, they fight with everything they have. But Iron Wind did none of those things. He simply stood there, looking straight at the man holding the rope. The rider pulled the rope tighter. Still, nothing. No panic, no struggle, just quiet resistance. The other riders shifted in their saddles. Something about the moment felt strange. The stallion wasn't acting like an animal caught in a trap. He looked calm, almost thoughtful. Minutes passed. The wind moved across the valley grass. Finally, the stallion took one step backward, not out of fear, but as if he was saying something without words. And in that moment, the rider realized something. This horse wasn't fighting him. The stallion was simply deciding. The rope suddenly felt different in the rider's hands. He had broken dozens of horses before, but this one wasn't breaking. He was choosing whether or not to surrender his freedom. And suddenly the rider felt something he didn't expect. Respect. Slowly, he loosened the rope. The stallion felt it immediately. The tension disappeared. Iron Wind stepped forward. The loop slipped free from his neck. For a moment, horse and rider stood facing each other in silence. Then the stallion turned and walked calmly back toward the valley. Not running, just leaving. The other riders stared in disbelief. "Why did you let him go?" one finally asked. The lead rider watched the stallion disappear into the wind. Then he answered quietly, Because some strength isn't meant to be owned. He paused before adding one more sentence. Sometimes the strongest creature in the world is the one that refuses the rope. And years later, ranchers still told the story of the stallion who wouldn't break. Because real power isn't always about control. Sometimes real power is the courage to remain free.